she found out this robot boy has something to do with her missing mother being alive. And so, she delves deep into the abyss to find her. Cute little anime adventure. What could go wrong, right? We start things off by meeting Rico. It's her first time excavating and delving in the abyss completely by herself. Though, due to their areas being close together, she is traveling with her friend, Nat. They split up, and Rico manages to get a haul of relics so massive she can barely transport them. She goes to try and find Nat to help her with it. After rounding a corner, she sees a giant beastly serpent called a Crimson Splitjaw, moving slowly towards Nat, who we see has suffered a head injury and is unconscious. Worried for Nat's safety, Rico blows on her whistle, which draws the attention of the Splitjaw to her. You didn't think this through, did you? After getting hit by the tail of the Splitjaw and finding nothing broken, Rico runs away from it. She then gets cornered to the point of almost being devoured, when an energy blast of some kind shoots through the petrified trees, hitting the Splitjaw, causing it to flee. Wondering what just saved her, she goes to investigate, finding a robot boy who is seemingly unconscious. Wondering where he came from, she goes and gets Nat to help her with carrying him back to their home at the Belchero orphanage, where after sneaking him past the orphanage director, they stash him in a shed. The next day after their classes, Rico tells her instructor, Jiro, that she wants to be assigned to somewhere deeper in the abyss, so she can build up more experience and catch up to her mother, who is the highest ranked delver there is, a legendary white whistle. Jiro reminds her that she can't, as with her current experience, she could barely handle ascending from just 400 meters in the abyss, telling her that she just needs to work hard on what she can right now, and keep at it. She will eventually get there. Later that night, with the help of her friends, Rico manages to revive the robot boy after zapping him with a high voltage. She starts asking him questions, but it becomes apparent that he has amnesia, and doesn't even remember his own name. Rico gives him the name of Reg, and they manage to break out of the orphanage using Reg's extendable arms. She then takes him to a high vantage point overlooking the entire city of Orth, which is a city that was made around the entry point of the abyss. Just as the sun rises, beautifully illuminating the city, Rico tells him that because she's never seen or heard about anything like him before, he must have come from the lowest levels of the abyss. The next day, Rico and all of her friends go through the compilation of all recovered relics that have ever been discovered, and confirm that there's never been any mention of anything like Reg. Due to this, Rico fears that Reg might be taken away or dismantled if he was ever found out, and the next day, they come up with a plan to disguise him as just a regular orphan, and so, they discreetly arrange for his enrollment with Jiro in the orphanage. Their deceit and trickery somehow works, and Reg begins his training as a delver, receiving the lowest rank of a bell whistle. A few months pass, and we learn that Rico's uncle Habolg and his team are returning from their expedition to the second layer of the abyss. Rico takes Reg, and they witness them coming out, where we see Habolg hand over a white whistle along with some sealed documents to another man. One of the men in the crowd notices the white whistle and says they know who that belongs to, stating that it's Liza the Annihilator's whistle. Reg asks Rico what does it mean if it's just a whistle, and we see Rico, stunned, saying that Liza is her mother's name. A short time later, a festival then breaks out around the city, in celebration for the return of Liza's white whistle, saying that her last dive she started 10 years ago has finally been completed. Rico is somberly reflecting on her mother's white whistle, which was given to her by Habolg as she is the next of kin. When Jiro comes over to her and reminds her that this festival is meant to be a showcase of just how amazing her mother was, so she shouldn't look so upset. They chat for a bit and Jiro tells her about the reason why she needs to wear glasses, saying that there's nothing physically wrong with her eyesight and revealing that it's a curse of the abyss, telling her that her mother became pregnant with her a short time before embarking on a 10-month dangerous expedition to the 4th layer of the abyss. He then explains that Liza used a rare relic known as the curse-repelling vessel to return Rico to safety. Later that night, Rico is given permission to view the sealed documents left for her from her mother, revealing that her mother found all new kinds of creatures down in the depths of the abyss. One of them is a drawing of a humanoid figure that is similar to Reg. They then see a piece that only has writing on it, which states that at the bottom of the abyss, she will be waiting. She yoinks this bit of paper, and then once back at the orphanage, tells all of her friends that she has decided to descend into the abyss in order to find her mother. Nat, however, completely opposes the idea, stating that she will never be able to return to the surface if she does, due to the curse of the abyss and the strains of ascension, which basically makes it so as you progress deeper down, going back up becomes much more taxing on your body. An example being, ascending from the first layer of the abyss, you might get some dizziness and nausea, but if you ascend even 10 meters while being on the 4th layer of the abyss, you will proceed to, bleed from every orifice, which just sounds real fun. The next day, Reg does his first delve into the first layer with Nat. where he's now been promoted to a red whistle. Reg then explains to Nat that he believes he will find the answers to his own identity, and understand the reasoning behind his lost memories and why he ascended to the surface in the first place if he travels with Rico to the bottom of the abyss. Nat is frustrated that Reg also wants to leave and storms off. Later that night at the orphanage, Rico reveals that they plan to sneak out before daybreak. To help them out, Shiggy, one of Rico's friends, gives them a map, which shows all of the current 6 layers known of the abyss. Nat then begins another argument with Rico about going, telling her that her mother most likely died a long time ago, since it would be impossible for someone to survive down there for 10 years, even if they were a white whistle. Rico runs off crying, not wanting to hear it. In the early morning, after Rico and Reg break out of the orphanage, they are met by Shiggy and Nat. Nat apologizes to Rico for saying such hurtful things and guides them to the wharf quarter, an unguarded entry point into the abyss. They then have a sorrowful goodbye, with Rico telling Nat that even if they never get to see each other again, they'll always be connected to each other by the abyss. With that, Rico and Reg depart on their journey. They manage to descend deep down into the first layer, and after successfully catching some fish, Reg shows Rico a letter that was slipped into his backpack before they left the orphanage. It contains a copy of the sketches from her mother's drawings, along with vital information about the abyss. Oh, and also a little note from Jiro, the orphanage leader, the one who put this note into Reg's backpack, stating that he's going to start pursuing them after sunrise, and if he catches them, he's going to bring them back to the orphanage.
Oh, shit!
Rico decides that they must race to the second layer, as any Red Whistle member who goes that deep gets written off as dead. They drop down a ledge below and enter the lair of a spider creature known as a Silk Fang. Rico tells Reg to use it as an anchor, as they can't leave their territory, and they drop down, escaping it. After descending a bit more, they take a break, when Reg notices something off in the distance. Rico is worried that it might be Jiro's search party, but Reg uses his zoom and enhance to see that it's just a single delver. They make their way down quick, using Reg's extendo arms. However, even with that, it's not enough to escape their pursuer. He jumps down, and we see the friendly face of Habolg, who takes an interest in Reg, calling him a treasure of the underworld. After, inspecting him... What the fuck? He reveals to them that Nat and Shiggy requested him to escort them safely to the Seeker's camp in the second layer of the abyss. Rico, however, while appreciating the offer, declines, saying that she and Reg need to do this on their own, as they view it as a final test from their teacher. Habolg says fair enough, then informs them about the Guardian at the Seeker camp, Ozen, saying that they're a bit strange, telling Rico that Ozen was the one who helped her mother transport her to the surface when she was born. He tells Rico that he can't get into the details about her, but just to be wary. They say their farewells, then shortly after, Rico and Reg reach the second layer of the abyss, the Forest of Temptation, where they will now never be searched for ever again. Cool. As Rico and Reg wander through the Forest of Temptation, they hear someone calling out for help. Racing to try and save them, Rico and Reg make their way down. At a clearing, however, they find a large bird-like creature near the body of a delver. Reg is about to attack it when it turns to him, and we find out that it's actually the bird calling for help. Rico tells him to stop, explaining that that creature is a corpse sweeper, and that they mimic the pleas and cries of those they capture in order to lure others into their colonies. Its plan has already worked though, and we see another corpse sweeper dive down, grabbing Rico, which then flies to its nest trying to feed her to its chicks. Several more begin to attack Reg, and in a desperate attempt he activates the cannon in his hand, destroying several of the corpse sweepers and a large portion of the surrounding landscape. He grabs the falling Rico from the air, bringing her to a safe location. And we see that even though Rico didn't ascend much, she is still suffering from the strains of ascension. After waking up, Rico is insanely impressed with Reg's arm cannon and dubs it the Incinerator. Reg, however, passes out shortly after, due to the strain of using the weapon. After waking up, Rico has some steaks cooking on a stone slab. Reg starts eating some and it's delicious. He says he's impressed that she managed to hunt something down out here. She says actually it's the corpse sweepers, which also eat humans.
Oh no, bro.
Rico and Reg then proceed to the lowest area of the Forest of Temptation, known as the Inverted Forest, where Reg's extendo arms don't work as well due to the strong wind currents. They then proceed to get chased by a group of these red-eyed monkeys, which stop after they leave their territory. Continuing on, Rico and Reg then approach the Seeker camp, which was originally built as a place for delvers to rest who are planning to go deeper. As no gondola is being lowered for them, Reg launches his arms up, preparing to pull himself and Rico up, when he feels something wrong, and we see a woman holding his arms. She throws his arms back down and lowers the gondola. After going up, Rico and Reg finally meet the white whistle holder, Ozen, the immovable. Making their way inside, Rico then thanks Ozen for helping her mother carry her up to the surface so long ago. This, however, amuses Ozen, and she points out that there were several times she had considered abandoning the curse-repelling vessel she was in due to its sheer weight. She says she is curious to find out how a pair of red whistle holders managed to make their way here, but first she has other matters to attend to, instructing her apprentice Marok to listen to them, and that tomorrow she will hear them out personally. Ozen then lends them blue whistles for while they're staying in the camp. as to not arouse suspicion amongst the other delvers here, and wants to hold on to Liza's white whistle until they leave. It doesn't take long for Rico and Reg to befriend Marek, who became a blue whistle at a young age due to being a direct apprentice of Ozan. Marek tells Rico and Reg that if they stay for longer, they can delve together. However, Rico reluctantly declines, saying that she would love to, but it's her mission to find her mother at the bottom of the abyss. That night, as they're sleeping, Rico tries to find the bathroom, and on her journey finds a strange-looking creature which starts walking towards her. Noping entirely out of the situation, she just goes back to the bedroom. The next morning, Ozan takes Rico and Reg to her private chambers. Along the way, however, she tells Rico that the fact that Liza's white whistle made it to the surface should be enough for her to know that her mother is dead. Ozan then reveals that she is the one that recovered Liza's letter and whistle from a gravesite in the 4th layer, then claiming that the letter is also not Liza's handwriting. Once inside Ozan's chambers, we see the curse-repelling vessel that saved Rico so long ago. They make their way up to it, and using her whistle, Ozan activates it, telling Rico that it is indeed called the curse-repelling vessel, explaining that when creatures are placed inside of it, they don't get affected by the strain of ascension and don't die, which is the reason why it got its name. However, that's not quite right. She says that whatever is placed inside the vessel still gets affected by the curse and dies. But then, it starts moving around again, telling Rico that she came to understand that due to her, telling her that she was stillborn, but after placing her inside, suddenly came back to life. She then tells her that the creature she saw last night was actually just some meat she was going to have for dinner, but decided to put it into the vessel. It came to life and then died a few hours later. Ozan then begins taunting Rico, comparing her to that meat, and wondering how long it will be until she just drops dead, when Reg, angry at her actions, begins to attack Ozan, who remains unmoved. She then gets dripped up and renders Reg unconscious from her superhuman strength. Reg is then later awakened by the Subterranean Bandits, a group of delvers who stay at the Seeker base, thanks to Marek bringing them in. Ozan admits that she was testing both Rico and Reg to surmise if they would be able to survive in the abyss, concluding that at their current state, even though Reg is incredibly durable, they wouldn't be able to survive and are in desperate need of training. Ozan then tells Rico she did lie about one more thing, telling her that the grave she found Liza's things at was in fact empty. While walking off, we see a flashback of when Ozan was Liza's mentor, tutoring her from when she was a red whistle to a black. Ozan then tasks Rico and Reg to survive on the outskirts of the abyss for the next 10 days, and suggesting because it would leave them completely defenseless, Reg should only use the incinerator as a desperate last resort, since he faints after using it and is unresponsive for 2 hours. After Ozan leaves, Rico and Reg are left to fend for themselves. They quickly find some aquatic creatures known as Roanas, which indicate the most important aspect of survival, fresh water. After setting up camp and getting settled in, Rico and Reg then spend the next 5 days struggling to catch a creature called an Atoba, which is basically just a much deadlier version of a hippo. After 10 days, Rico and Reg successfully complete their survival training and return to the Seeker camp, where they share a dinner with Ozan. She tells them about how time flows differently the deeper into the abyss you delve, explaining that for Rico it's been 10 years since Liza left, but for Liza, only a few may have passed depending on how time works down there. She then gives them a warning about staying too long in the 5th layer, telling them to avoid the other white whistles there, especially one known as Bondrude, stating that he is not as kind as she is. I'm sure that's nothing to worry about. Ozan then gives Rico a relic called the Blaze Reap, Liza's abnormally large pickaxe that was salvaged from the 4th layer next to her fake gravesite, which due to its condition can be used sparingly before it starts to break, offering that as an alternative to Reg's incinerator. Later on, Marek and the Subterranean Bandits bid farewell to Rico and Reg. Ozan then reminisces about the promise that she made to Liza long ago, which was to help Rico find her when the time came. Rico and Reg then set off towards the 3rd layer, the Great Fault, where they find it's just a sheer drop all around. However, there are countless interconnected caverns which let them avoid the flying predators of the layer. As they make their way down one of the caverns, they enter into a ship, a literal ship that somehow made its way into the side of the walls here. Excited by this, Rico goes to search for possible relics that might be hiding, when she instead finds out that they're in a lair belonging to one of those flying predators. Having no other option, Reg uses the incinerator to kill it. Remember old mate Crimson Splitjaw from the start? Well, after seeing that incinerator blast, he decides he wants a rematch. Running away, they barely manage to escape it before Reg passes out due to using the incinerator. Feeling hungry, Rico drags Reg along, trying to search for food, when she is lured in by a sweet smell, and swallowed by a creature known as an Amakagame. a strange bulbous creature that is basically just a giant stomach. Worried about being digested, she immediately starts to cut her way out. Hey, not so fast. There are some people who would pay good money for this experience. Side note, don't look that up. After cutting her way out, due to the sweet smell of the amakagame, these cute little rodent dudes swarm all over her, thinking that she is their fruit. She manages to escape away and finds herself in a cavern with an upward slope. A slope so severe that she will start suffering from the strains of ascension. She thinks about just waiting here, but hears the rodents getting closer. She starts to make her way up, and she experiences severe vertigo and hallucinations, the curse of the third layer. Upon reaching the top, Reg awakens just as the Crimson Splitjaw again finds them. After briefly fighting it, he uses the Blaze Reap to chase it off. After setting up camp in a lower cavern, Rico and Reg can now see the fourth layer, the Goblet of Giants. Rico and Reg then travel down to the layer, which they find out is incredibly humid and comprises of giant concave discs filled with warm water. As they continue on through this layer, they reach an area heavy with fog, when Reg notices something silhouetted behind them. The fog clears and we see its full shape. Rico immediately tells Reg that they need to run now, as the creature before them is an orb piercer, a large, incredibly territorial porcupine-like animal, with quills so sharp they can penetrate steel and are laced with a deadly poison. Reg tries to run away, however, the orb piercer can easily predict his path, hitting the backpack. It then knocks the Blaze Reap far out of their grasp, and they're not left with many more options. Reg then uses a relic known as the Scaled Umbrella to try and block its quills, which still manage to quite easily break through. Reg turns to Rico, telling her that they need to try and get the Blaze Reap, when he is cut off, as we see that one of the quills has penetrated Rico's left hand, which then begins to inject a lethal poison into her body. With no other options left, Reg is forced to escape by ascending to a safe spot above. Remember a bit earlier when I mentioned the whole thing about the fourth layer of the abyss, making it so that when you ascend, you do this really cute thing of bleeding through every single orifice you have? Yeah, well, we now get to see that, and it's horrifying. In a delirious state, Rico tells Reg that he needs to cut off her arm in order to prevent the poison from going further, which he reluctantly begins to go through with after seeing her arm swell massively. However, halfway through, Rico stops breathing, and Reg begins to fall into despair. Suddenly, a mysterious rabbit-like being tells Reg more or less to stay calm, and guides him on how to perform CPR. After stabilizing Rico, Reg takes her back to the rabbit creature's hideout, where after being worried about the risk of ascension strain, he is told that the curse isn't present here. Once inside, we find out the name of this being is Nanachi, but being a Delver, they would know them as being a Hollow. In the hideout, Nanachi begins patching up Rico's swollen left hand, and admits to watching and listening to Reg and Rico ever since they entered the Goblet of Giants. While they're chatting, Reg hears a noise from the other room, and Nanachi says it's just her roommate, introducing Reg to her cute little middy.
What the f*** is that, a f***ing cat?
Nanachi explains that she is a Hollow too. Reg, however, is unfamiliar with the term, and Nanachi explains that the strain of ascension from the 6th layer causes either your immediate death, or you lose your humanity, and end up like Midi here. Nanachi then says the reason she personally didn't end up like that is because she is an exception among exceptions. Nanachi then gives Reg a gather quest for ingredients to heal Rico back to health, and also some things for her dinner. While looking after Rico, Nanachi seems to have some familiarity with the white whistle that Rico has on her. After Reg returns with all of the items and completes the quest, Nanachi places these parasitic water shrooms onto Rico's arm, in order to drain the fluid and prevent it from rotting while it heals. Nanachi then sends Reg to go and clean Rico's clothes at the riverbank outside the hideout. As Reg walks towards the riverbank, he makes his way through these flowers known as the Eternal Fortunes, when a memory suddenly resurfaces, of him standing by the gravestone that had the Blaze Reap placed on top of it, and him telling Liza he'll be going now. Nanachi then snaps him out of the memory, and inside, while Rico is left alone, we see Midi crawling on top of her. Reg walks in, seeing Midi all over Rico and is ready to square up, when Nanachi tells him not to worry about it, and that Midi is harmless, but has probably just become attached to Rico due to them being around the same age. After they have some questionable dinner, Nanachi uses a relic called a fogweave, which is a super thin piece of cloth to accurately demonstrate the Curse of the Abyss's true nature, stating that the curse hits you all at once when you break through one of the layers, and all living things permeate around the curse with a sort of force field. However, the farther away you get from the vertical shaft of the abyss, the weaker the curse becomes, which is why Nanachi's hideout is so safe. She also tells him that creatures such as the Orb Piercer can predict the actions of others due to them being able to see the force field. Nanachi can also see the force field due to being made hollow, and wants to give Reg a taste of what it's like, giving him a little training session back at the main section of the Goblet of Giants. Reg then hears a Black Whistle Delver being attacked by an Orb Piercer and goes to save him. Being instructed by Nanachi through an earpiece on how to avoid and outplay the Orb Piercer, Reg then uses his incinerator to chase off the beast. Afterwards, he asks the Black Whistle Delver to tell Jiro that both he and Rico are continuing on in their journey. Reg then returns to Nanachi and thanks her for the instructions on how to beat the Orb Piercer. After seeing Reg's incinerator in action, Nanachi then requests Reg do something for her. Reg says he'll do anything, and Nanachi responds, asking him to please kill Mitty. While bringing Reg back to the hideout, as his use of the incinerator caused him to pass out, Nanachi remembers her past life and the reason that led to them living on the 4th layer. A long time ago, we see a human Nanachi in what appears to be the slums of a foreign country. Suddenly, children all around begin to go outside, and curious about what's going on, Nanachi follows. As they gather outside, we see the reason for all the commotion. A White Whistle Delver who introduces himself as Bondrude, where he invites all children brave enough to face the abyss to accompany him on his next voyage. Nanachi is one of the many orphans who agree to go along. During their descent to the facility at the 5th layer of the abyss, known as the Edo Front, Nanachi and Mitty have their first interactions, where they immediately hit it off, finding out about each other's inspirations and ambitions. And we learn that Mitty wants to become a White Whistle Delver herself, while Nanachi explains that it doesn't matter what they do, as anything from here on out will be better than their previous life.
Are you sure about that?
After they arrive at the Edo Front, they're told over the intercom to be careful, that if they climb more than 10 meters, they will suffer the strains of ascending. They're then shown to the room they will be living in. Over time, we see Bondrude call out child after child, until it's just Mitty and Nanachi left. Then one night, he comes in and requests Mitty to come with him. As Nanachi and Mitty have bonded over these last weeks, Nanachi breaks out, wanting to be with her. When Nanachi overhears Bondrude telling one of his men that the experiments he is doing are not against human rights.
あれらは人間としての運用はしておりませんので。
Worried for Mitty's safety, Nanachi races to try and make sure she's okay, finding her in a large tube. When Bondrude suddenly appears behind Nanachi, saying that it's her turn now too. Nanachi is placed inside another container next to Mitty, and Bondrude explains that they are in elevators that can descend into the 6th layer. The destination is a controlled area, making it perfect for research on human subjects and their reaction to the 6th layer's curse, death or loss of one's humanity. While they are both in shock at what's being told to them, they are suddenly forced to embark on the world's most horrifying roller coaster. After arriving at the next layer, Nanachi becomes even more frightened. Mitty, however, calms her down by telling her that everything will be fine, and that she will endure the curse for her, but saying that if she does end up losing her humanity, to please let her soul return to her. They then begin to ascend. Nanachi turns into the form we know her as now. Mitty, on the other hand, starts bleeding severely and screams out in pain to the point of begging to be killed. Nanachi, shocked by this, can do nothing but watch in despair as her best friend turns into the cursed form we now know. After arriving back up, Bondrude expresses how pleased he is with the results of the experiment, as it seems Mitty took the brunt of the curse of ascension, and doing so spared Nanachi from death. Back at the hideout, Nanachi is explaining her story to the now conscious Reg as well, and says due to Bondrude's experiments, Mitty is immortal and can no longer die. After she escaped the Edo Front with Mitty, she has tried many different times in many different ways, but nothing works and she can't end Mitty's suffering. After hearing about Nanachi's story, Reg agrees to her request on trying to kill Mitty using his incinerator. Sometime later, Nanachi makes a nice little spot for Mitty, and after saying her final goodbyes, Reg uses his incinerator, completely disintegrating Mitty, finally freeing her from her suffering, with Nanachi wailing in grief nearby. The next day, Rico then gains consciousness, and after finally cooking them up some good food, tells them that while she was unconscious, she had this terrible nightmare, but her fears were eased when she felt the presence of someone else with her. Then, after feeling that presence's soul being freed, she woke up also. After spending some time in a natural hot spring with Reg, and then having the parasitic water shrooms painfully removed on her left hand, Rico asks Nanachi to join their quest in finding Liza, in which Nanachi agrees, having nothing left to keep her here. Before leaving the hideout, they stock up on much needed goods and supplies necessary for the journey, and before delving deeper, send up a mail balloon in hopes of it reaching back home, which after some time is eventually reached by Nat and Shiggy on the surface. Elsewhere, down in the Edo Front, Bondrude has been watching Mitty and Nanachi through their life signatures on a board. After seeing that Nanachi somehow managed to kill Mitty, he anticipates Nanachi's soon arrival. Hey, thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed, please like and subscribe. It only takes a second and it really helps me out.